Folks, just when you thought it would settle down in Leaf Land, a handful of games left, nothing really to play for. We may have just seen the craziest week of the entire Tubas era. We faced a Jet, we played a Jet. Who's the backup? We're going to break it all down for you right here on the OZone.
You're in the offensive zone, your place for Leafs hockey.
Hey folks, welcome to the OZone. That's Coach, that's Katie, and I'm the Devo. We're here to talk all things Leafs. Coach, where you at today?
I'm in the U.S. headquarters, guys. Nothing says playoff hockey is approaching like sunny in 84.
I got news for you. It was like that here in Toronto today, too, by the way. Katie,
baseball season.
How are you cooking down there on the east side?
Actually, I'm in the Ivory Tower today, just getting ready to go to see the second J home game, and had a big win yesterday, and we're looking for 2 in a row.
All right, great. Folks, before you get started, hit subscribe. A lot of you watching the videos, hit subscribe, ring the bell. You'll never miss any content. Also, share it, like the video, especially before the playoffs here. You want to get all your friends involved so you know what to talk about every day. Listen, there is lots to talk about. And we can start, a win versus Columbus, OT loss versus Boston, blowout win versus the Habs, OT win versus a desperate Florida team, tough road win versus Tampa. Yes, folks, those Tampa Bay Lightning. Coach, we'll start with you. A lot happened this week. What'd you like? What didn't you like?
Yeah, we'll get into the Cap Chicanery in a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
Because that's fascinating, right? But I will say this. So, with Murray out, Ilya Samsonov had to play a lot, and he was terrific. And not to be outdone, Joe Wall finally gets clearance to go in and play last night against Tampa. He was terrific too, guys.
Yep.
So in the last 5 games, the Leafs have really buckled down defensively. 1.6 goals a game over that stretch in April, 5 games. Oh, Ilya, if you need it in April, he's at a .959 save percentage.
Yeah. So
that's good. The Russian machine never breaks either. He's banged up, but he'll be fine. It is playoff style, especially against tough playoff teams, right? 2-1 overtime loss against Boston. That holding that team to a goal was great. Yep. Florida forechecked the heck out of us, held them down too, and then Tampa, really with a reduced roster, we dug in and kept the shots to the outside. Luke Schenn, guys, what a presence. Hey, Pat Maroon met his right fist a couple times and did not return. Hey, have you ever seen Pat Maroon, like you've gone to a game and see? He's enormous.
Yes.
And
massive.
Luke Schenn took care of him. That's fantastic. That's the kind of stuff we needed. How about McCabe against Tampa? Those blocks with just throwing himself right in the way, kick save and a beauty.
Yep.
I also like Connor Timmins. I got a soft spot for Connor Timmins.
Sure.
A really slick skating, puck-moving defenseman like the old coach. And he gets to play some forward. It's not the easiest thing to do. No. I don't know if you saw it, KD. He was taking 15, 18, 20-second shifts. That's the guy you love in beer league if you're playing after him when you're in your 20s, and you detest when you're in your 40s and 50s. Stay out. Stay out. I also, a couple quick things, right? Matthews got 40. Good for him. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. He was at 31. Could he do it? And that's awesome to see. Hope Marner gets his 100th against the Rangers. The last thing I'll say is, and this gets into the Cap stuff, which we'll go to.
Yep.
No Wayne Simmons against Tampa. Boy, would the temperature of that game ever have come down if Simmons was up and could have played? He definitely would have played in that one. Would have taken care of all the little stuff. I think we would have kept that to a minimum.
Yeah, I agree.
So maybe there's a role for that guy in the playoffs, as you guys have argued to me most of the year.
Yep. Katie, what are your thoughts on this past week?
Well, it's kind of rudderless hockey. Like there's not a real motivation. I'm actually quite impressed with the performance of a lot of the guys and the team in general, stepping up and actually playing pretty hard when there's no clear motivation to do so. I don't like this hockey. Like I find it very anxious time. This is time injuries happen. This is time that stupid stuff happens, potentially bad habits form. I can't wait for the playoffs to start. In my opinion, they can't start soon enough.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's been challenging, I think, as a Leaf fan. We've known we were playing Tampa in the first round really since January. But listen, as far as the last week goes, you got to like the outcome, right? Like 9 of 10 points. And they beat a team, they beat a team they should have. A couple of teams they should have, really.
Doesn't always happen, right, Devo?
Doesn't always happen.
Not always happen.
Yeah, and like the coach said, you got to love the goalie play, especially this time of year, and we really hope that continues. And we're going to get into this, I guess. But nice to get O'Reilly back. Nice to get Yarncroc back. Nice to get Achari back. Those things are important. It looks like the D pairings, even though there was some gerrymandering a little bit with the lineup, seem to be kind of settling a little bit. 44. Riley's starting to look pretty decent, logging some good minutes, some tough minutes in some of those games too, which is important to see. Listen, we got to see Nyes. We've been talking about him all year. And maybe that's a good segue. Let's use that. This signing ended up being a very, very big signing because it set off, as we said at the top here, one of the craziest thing. It was just a crazy week. The cap situation and how it's affected our goaltending. With Murray going down as well. And for the past 3 games, the Leafs have had 3 different guys on amateur tryout contracts playing backup goaltender. It's unprecedented. All through the media, nobody seems to know what to make of this. Are the Leafs geniuses with their cap manipulation? Is this something to feel guilty about? Is it embarrassing? Is it bad cap management? I guess all of those questions have been asked, certainly online. KD, let's start with you. What do you make of the situation that we've seen for the past few games?
I mean, at the end of the day, I would go, meh. It's much to do about nothing, just simply because it hasn't really affected anything. No one got hurt. We got to see maybe a player play. It hasn't changed the who's in the standings. If it had blown up in the Leafs' face and they lost a seed because of it, or they didn't make the playoffs, or they had trouble, that would have been a disaster. But this is a cap-strapped team trying to get ready for the playoffs in a position they knew they were going to be in 2 months ago. So does it make a lot of difference? I don't know. It doesn't. Is it something for us to talk about? Absolutely. Is it maybe a little bit embarrassing? Maybe. Should the league change some of the rules? Maybe. Who knows? But at the end of the day, we're right where we started. Like nothing's any different. So I'm just going to chalk it up and just hope for the playoffs come Monday.
It's true. It's not like they're burying $9 million and running up a roster here. You're bringing in a guy that likely, in my opinion, I guess we'll get to it, won't really play. Coach, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, hold on. I was just looking up gerrymandering on my phone. Oh, that's what that means. Okay. So it feels like they got their hand caught in the cookie jar, guys. So they're moving stuff around. Simmons gets sent down Sunday, which they never really announced. We didn't know. And if we don't know, how are the subscribers going to know? So
I was texting with Wayne, too, and he didn't get back to me. So I think it was kind of touch and go right before the game. Yeah.
So he gets sent down, and then, they clear space for Nyes and the tough loss, and so he comes on board. And they created that mess for themselves, and I think they thought the league would be like, no problem, call him up, Murray's hurt. And the league said no, and I think it was genuine shock. I don't think they had a plan B, but they called it one of the practices. They had 5 goalies there, and they're just kind of running through. Hey, do you know this guy? But we played junior over here. Let's get him out. And they're not at home either. They're on the road. Right. So the one guy from UNB had to fly to Toronto, stay overnight, catch the early flight down to Tampa, He's there for the morning skate. He ended up not dressing. He might dress tomorrow night. But, yeah, it felt like it didn't feel like it was planned, right? Where a lot of this stuff, you hear about Brandon Pridham and he's managing the cap to the dollar and all that stuff, and they really have a plan. It didn't feel that way. But you're right. Ultimately, it's not that big a deal. It would have been a huge deal, and as I told you guys on the text, I would have come on here and dropped a dozen F-bombs and got myself canceled if Samsonov had played against Tampa.
Yep.
He cannot play in that game. You can't have Corey Perry running around with Samsonov there as your only healthy NHL goalie, right? So I think they were prepared, the Leafs, at that point to say, all right, doesn't mean anything, right? Florida's playing for something, but Tampa's not.
Yeah.
We'll just play this guy we found from the Windsor Spitfires. And the NHL probably looked at that and said, whoa, okay, we can't have that. Call Joe Wall up. It's okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, maybe much ado about nothing, but the rest of the league gets to chuckle at the Leafs' expense. Hey, we're used to that.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see 6 forwards, 6 skaters. That would have been a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, look,
That's another beer league, isn't it? Right? You get the 10:45 game and guys start dropping like flies.
You guys have to hit the sock.
Like the e-bug thing, I can live with it. But listen, last Tuesday, yesterday, I think it was a bad look for the team. Calling a presser at 3 p.m. on a game day to address the goaltender situation, it's not a good look. I don't love playing with 10 forwards. As you said, like you want guys like Simmons, heck, even Clifford to be available for a game like this. You couldn't do it. That's not a great look. When Murray went down, we knew things were going to get kind of tight. And I don't really care what Weidman said after the game in Montreal. Yeah. That was an embarrassment game for his team. Bottom line is, I don't care what he thinks. You don't want to see an emergency backup in a game like that. Don't go down by 6 goals. It's that simple. Your team should have been playing a beer league goalie because you were icing a beer league team, and the Leafs have to apologize for that. I don't think so. My issue is more what happened on Tuesday. It didn't look. It seemed a little frantic, a little chaotic, not really managed, as you I think alluded to, Coach. And that's kind of not what you want your jewel of the league franchise, the Toronto Maple Leafs, looking like as they're closing out the season, and ultimately a meaningless game, right?
Yeah, look, if the league and the world wants to make fun of the Leafs, just give it a couple of weeks. The playoffs are coming up, folks.
Yeah, listen, and maybe that was the league kind of just sticking it to Toronto a little bit too. Wall was ultimately approved. He got to play versus Tampa, and he was fantastic, as Coach mentioned. Maybe this brings up another interesting point, too. Wall was fantastic and has really been fantastic through his play the last little bit. So even if Murray is healthy, even if he's cleared to play for Game 1, who backs up, Murray or Wall? I'm going to ask you this one, Coach. Coach, what do you think?
Short and sweet here. It's Joe Wall all day long. I would talk to Murray and his concussion therapist and say, guys, take all the time you need. Joe Wall's been solid for us. I get that he doesn't have playoff experience. I get that. Yep. Joe Thornton had a ton of playoff experience. So did Patrick Marleau. Doesn't mean you're going to get that guy, right? Yep. And we know we haven't seen that guy out of Murray for a while. I'm fine with it. If we get to a backup against Tampa, whether that's Murray or Joe Wall, we're in trouble. Samsonov's got to be good, right? So I think it's Joe Wall for me.
Kind of. All right, Katie, I'll ask you the same question. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to put this picture up right here, and you started adding guys because we're worried that this core doesn't have the experience to get in deeper in the playoffs. Well, we do have a guy who's won a few cups and was one of the major contributors to those 2 cups. So, if that's my backup, I gotta pull for that. At the very least, talking in the ear of Samsonov, just to settle him down and just maybe to sit beside him in the dressing room when they're getting ready without the nerves. Like one guy's been through it all and done it. So, I just feel it doesn't hurt. You're right. If we're looking at second and third string goalies deeper in the playoffs, we got some problems. But I kind of like the idea of having that veteran there ready to go.
Hey, KD, Samsonov's played 8 playoff games. Come on. I mean, he's won 1 out of those 8. Oh, jeez.
Here it comes. Here it comes.
Here we go.
All right, this brings up another interesting question. Okay, so let's say Wall does back up Samsonov, and it's reasonable. Whether that would be the way you'd manage things or not, KD. It's very possible that his injury also makes him not available. And if he's not available to start the playoff, I suspect he's not playing again this year. So if that's the way it goes, here's a question for you. Has Murray played his last game as a Leaf? Coach?
I don't think so. I think he's back next year because I think it's going to be really tough to get rid of that contract. And, you get rid of Marleau, cost you a first-round pick. Nick Ritchie, we kind of fluked out with Lyubushkin. It's really expensive to get rid of those contracts. Like, what did Ottawa give us? A second-rounder and a third-rounder, I think, to take it in the first place. So I think he's here, A, because you can't get rid of the contract, B, because Samsonov, we're not going to be able to afford him. He's had such a great year, right? He's, I think he's 5th in save percentage, or goals against, 9th in save percentage. He's 4th in shutouts. He's making 1.8. I don't think we can afford him, even if we got rid of the Murray contract. So I think he's coming back, Murray.
Interesting. KD, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably has to come back for sure. I would do the other way. I'll bet you he plays again as a Leaf. I'll bet you by the end of next year he's not the starter there either. I think he probably gets supplanted by Wall next year. So
yeah.
So I think that's kind of maybe how it's going to go. Maybe you have it's like Varlamov in New York. You just keep losing your spot to someone who's younger.
Yeah, and ultimately, if you look at the salary cap situation, if you look at it from just a goaltender perspective, if that's how it plays out, it's Wall and Murray next year, the Leafs don't have that much committed to goaltending. It's not the end of the world. If that's how they're spending it, obviously you'd prefer not to spend that much on Murray. But
yeah, one thing we can all agree on, Joe Wall has had a tremendous audition. He deserves a real shot to be in the NHL next year with one of those guys. Yep. Depending on if you could get whatever the contract ends up being. He's in the mix, he's affordable, and he's been really solid.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, so Wall had a great game versus Tampa. The whole game was really actually quite entertaining. It was funny to hear John Cooper and Stamkos talking about how there was no intensity to that game. I think as Coach put it, maybe they should have asked Marleau's face on that one if there was intensity. Leafs rested their big guns while Tampa basically played their best lineup. There were goals, fights, tons of special teams play. But did the game really have any significance on next week's playoff series? KD?
So, like a debate in an election, they say you can't win an election on a debate, but you can sure lose the election on a debate. I think this was the same sort of situation. I don't think the Leafs now can go in saying, they're a definite favorite for the series, but they didn't lose it, and I think that was important. They didn't get bullied. Tampa started. They tried the rest to bully, and they didn't. Lots of penalties, 2 for 6 on the power play. Which is the best way to keep the series not physical, is to be dangerous on that power play. Plus, our big guys beat up their big guys. So, I think if they had gone in, got ragdolled, got beaten up and outscored, you kind of set the stage for maybe some trouble in the playoffs, and they kept it away. They didn't lose the debate, and I think the advantage is still theirs going into the playoff series.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable way to put it. Listen, I think you pointed out that going 2 for 6 on the power play. What about the 0 for 8 they held Tampa off? I thought that was significant. Coach, what do you think? Same question.
So you can't lose an election with a debate, could you lose an election if your brother was the mayor and he got caught smoking crack? Is too soon? Too soon?
Apparently not.
For you American folks, you're going to have to Google the Fords on that one. So, not the guy, not Edsel, not the guy in Detroit either. So, look, I that was a no-win game for Tampa the way it worked out. Here's what I mean by that. Tampa is really scuffling, right? They've given up 6 goals in 2 of their last 3 games. I think it was 15 goals over the last 3 games, something like that. Giving up a lot. They need to find themselves, and they're running out of time, right? So they played their best lineup, and the Leafs did not. So if Tampa wins big over Toronto, they're supposed to. Yeah. Matthews and Marner are worth a goal and a half in that game. They did not play. One of our best defensemen didn't play, right? And we're dressed a D at forward. Like, it was crazy. The lineup was a bit of a joke, right? So they're supposed to win. And if they lose, they're like, holy, like, we lost that game and those guys didn't play, which is what happened. And the kicker, I agree, is that they went 0 for 8 on the power play, which was the difference last year, guys. It was. Special teams was the difference. So how do the Leafs, without their best penalty killer and their 2 best power play guys, win the special teams battle last night? It's 1 game, but it is their best goalie too. Yeah. Right? So, they're in a no-win, and they did not win in that situation. That can't give them any confidence. Maybe it doesn't take much away, but it can't give them any. Right. And I think it gives the Leafs role guys a ton of confidence. They know they can compete, and they don't have to wait for 34 to score.
I agree. I'm going to maybe extend it beyond just the Tampa Bay game, and maybe I should have hit this at the top, but I think it's some general themes. We got to see really strong goaltending by our tandem over the last week. We saw it again in that game versus Tampa. We got to see the Leafs play a lot of different styles of hockey and come out mostly triumphant in all of those games. We got to see guys like Tavares and Nylander score some goals, some meaningful goals. That goal Nylander put through Vasilevsky's 5-hole, I think, was huge. I think those are kind of things that sink a goalie's confidence when a guy comes in and looks you off and goes between your on a little bouncer too. It was he kind of outthought him on that.
Larry stops that.
That was 3-ply right there.
Yeah. So all of those things, it allows you to go in against this team and go, all right, that goalie is beatable. All right, these guys do come out and they try to play tough, and they get a lot of they got a lot of calls. Even though it was funny that Stamkos and Cooper were complaining about the refs, they got 8 calls, and some of them were pretty soft. And it wasn't enough. They couldn't do anything with it. So I think it actually gives the Leafs a little bit of confidence, not just that game. I think the entire week should give them a lot of confidence. And that's where I think I'm going to leave it at. Guys, you got anything you want to add to this crazy week of hockey?
Well, we got to cross our fingers that Ilya is okay, right? Yeah. So he didn't play against Tampa. He never should have. I don't think he's playing against the Rangers. But we got at least 4 days, right, to rest up. He'll be good. Like he said, Sammy never break. Russian machine never breaks.
Yep. KD, anything you want to add?
Bring on the playoffs, man. They can't come soon enough.
Yeah, I agree. I love this matchup. Is going to be interesting. Us Leafs fans are going to be on the edge of our seats. Obviously, if you really look at the stats, you look at the tail of the tape, Toronto is the much better defensive team when you compare them. So I think we're going to go in as favorites, but I don't know how that's going to make you feel, Coach. There you have it, folks.
I think we're minus 150 favorites, and I know, Kev, you're the betting guy. It's just, how have we fared as favorites, guys?
Yeah. It never works. All right, well, we're pretty much through the stretch run, folks. One last game against New York. We'll still break that down. We're going to be opening up the mailbag pretty soon, so start leaving your comments. And we'll see you soon, right here